Good evening, everyone. It's Tom Sidney Bushnell, aka Numbers, here from the Tom Numbers Show in association with Sight Club. And we've got a first here. This will be the first show that will go out on my locals community channel. We've got 107 in the house, and then people that aren't a member of it will be able to still see it. We'll get as much of it as we can out on YouTube, so everyone will be covered. But people in the locals will get it straight away, and then shortly after we'll get it once we've checked everything, we'll get it out onto YouTube. So that gives you a bit of poetic license that one, you can say whatever you want to here. I mean, if you keep it cleaner, then we can get it out on YouTube quicker. But anyway, we have a free speech forum right now, so you can say as you need to. So yeah.
Well, cool. That's important. You know, we can't really talk freely in a lot of places around the world right now unless you're, I mean, look what's going right across the way there for you in France. You got the gal there that's what role is she? She's on Playboy now this month. I can't think what position she's in, one of the ministers, but I think
she's on Playboy this month.
Oh yeah. She's and you can say anything you want at Playboy, and by the way, you know what's interesting actually? She's on the cover of Playboy.
Yeah. And
she's handling the retirement funds and all that for all of France, and they're in the middle of a big hassle over there over how the retirement stuff monies are going to be handled, how much vacation they get, whatever, all the strikes and everything that are going on. And so she can say anything she wants in Playboy over there.
Yeah.
But we can't have an honest conversation back here in the US. And do you know where the money came from to create Playboy?
Soros.
No. Shoot, Soros wasn't even around then except as a wet dream of somebody's brain. No. CIA funded the creation of Playboy.
That was going to be my next. That was going to be my next guess, but yeah.
Yeah. So the only place you can have a relatively honest conversation is in the girly mags. Give me a break. I mean,
ooh la la! You've made me think of Back to the Future. In Back to the Future, Marty's got the sports almanac in Back to the Future 2. And then it gets swapped over because you've got Strickland, the Donald Strickland, the principal that doesn't seem to age in any of the episodes, even though there's a 50-year difference. And it somehow got swapped with Ooh La La, like this girly mag, and it's in the cover of the almanac. And Marty's like, I've got the almanac. He's like, oh no, Ooh La La. So yeah, and France, French, Ooh La La.
Oh, that's a fun point. I'd have to think about that because nothing in those things is by accident. They're doing kind of a pre-programming thing most of the time, and so you got to kind of look twice or three times to see what they're actually trying to tell you. It's like the Simpsons episodes where they're pre-programming you stuff they actually are going to do, and in so many ways, even the whole world right now, it's this handful of corporations that everything is centralizing to, and to run the whole world and all the sci-fi movies. And then you start thinking about it a little bit more and you go, actually, we're headed that way.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? You bring up the thing of the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. So I did the numbers on that not too long ago. Central Intelligence Agency comes to 243. But that also comes to John F. Kennedy, Eternal Flame. And you've talked extensively about, because we obviously in the movement Q in 17, but you said the origins of 17 was not good. And that's why we've taken it back. That's why we've been trolling them with 17. So I'm wondering the whole thing with JFK, Eternal Flame, 243 Central Intelligence Agency, they were trolling us at the beginning, but then we've captured the flag back and are trolling them again.
Well, actually, if you want to go the numbers a different way, CIA, that's if you want to go just a straight number to letter.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. C is 3.
Mm-hmm.
I is 9.
Mm-hmm.
And A is 1. So
391.
391. But they like to do a lot of weird stuff. So they like to do stuff backwards a lot of times. So you do 3 times 19, that'd be 57, and the 3, so 60. So you're at, which is a 6. And that's like a new creation, that's Adam, that's man, that's a replacement for man. There's some ways you could probably do that. I've done it in the past. I can't remember how I did it, but there was people that have worked out the numbers on it and came up with some pretty wild things. So anyway,
you said 391. So if you do the reverse of that, the mirror image of that, that's 139. That's Christopher. Mm-hmm. That's money exchange, but it's also Tower 2, as in 9/11. And the interesting
I was actually thinking of the 19. I was thinking of the 19. The the I being the 9 and the A being the 1, and so you can get lost in that stuff. But usually they got extra meanings when they do this. You got to think it through. What were they thinking of when they came up with it? So they got to brand
9/11 though. They do. There's one that they do. So Tower 2 is 139. Tower 1 is 115. You add them together is 254. 254 is actually the day of the year that it took place on, which was September 11th. But the 254th day of the year is September 11th. So like you said, that they've been doing this stuff for a long time. Okay, you brought my mind to a question you said about the Simpsons. So the Simpsons did the pre-programming of President Trump coming down the escalators, but there has been, unless I can't verify every single piece of footage of Simpsons episodes, but there has been pictures of President Trump in a coffin. Now, are we going to go that far to the wire? Are we going to see a gut punch like that, or is that going to be dissolved and we're not going to go that far?
No, they're not. They're not taking out Trump. I mean, I've been aware of all these allegations of hits and everything, and even right down to the tie color of the person that is running the team, and where they came from in origins and where they went through as far as airports and like that. There's plenty of people that got all sorts of theories, but he's got a beautiful team, protective team that has been with him back to the presidency, and he's in great shape. And I would say this too, God himself is protecting President Trump and his family. For all that they'd like to take him out, they're not going to succeed in taking him out.
Good. Well, you say he's got great protection. Secret Service is 151, which is Jesus Christ. So, yeah. Good.
Well, again, this is a pretty interesting day, on the numbers. I just, because we're talking about this on the day that Trump 4-4, that's a breaking the 8 number. And so I've talked about that a number of times. The 8 being the infinity sign. And it's like a mirror. When you stand in front of a mirror, you're on the reality side. And then there's the ethereal side. This idea that the magical or the spiritual, the spirit world is on the other side in the mirror. And so that breaking the 8 number, you'll see in music videos and things like that, commercials, etc. They will have some kind of a breaking of the glass, breaking of the mirror, the wrecking ball taking out the mirror, breaking the membrane between the physical and the spiritual side of things. And so this is a breaking the 8 number. It's also 4 is the number of foundation. And so they like to, in this ethereal world, or whatever they're doing, both sides, it's a foundational moment for the next things they want to do. So the date is not as random, I don't think, as you might at first think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And even if you do it in the simple gematria way, A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, it's April 8th. April 4th, correction. 4th is 88, Trump, and April is 56, which is light, which is healing. But you add them together as 144, gives you the whole thought of the 144,000, of maybe a frequency of that. But also, digital soldier is 144. So there's always, a good balance on the other side. It was interesting. You talked about the mirror, and you talked about spirit. So the word mirror is 91. The word POTUS is 91. And one of the Q posts says, I think it's 2017, it says on April 4th, it says POTUS will be up all night, pray for him, but also future is 91. Liberty is also 91. But the word spirit is also 91. And you mentioned spirit world. Spirit world is 163. President Trump said in 2020, he joked about taking Melania back to New York in an RV, but back to New York is 163, and that he's obviously gone back to New York today, for the proceedings. He did put something out on Truth Social, which I haven't done the numbers on it, but I know there's some significance to Staten Island. He said it would be much better to do this trial or this hearing in Staten Island, be a much better jurisdiction.
Again, you have such a venue is a big deal. We have that with, for example, the J6 prisoners. They, in looking at that venue, the people that would be potential jurors have such a perspective on this. That's why we move, say, very contentious trials, a murder trial or something like that, to a different venue, because it's hard to find a jury pool that isn't already made their minds up, if you will. And Southern District in New York is a very liberal location. And so the question is, would President Trump be able to get a jury that would be able to view this without, being very much so very predetermined? Just one second. Yeah, that's ours. Okay. Yeah. Thought I saw it go by. There we go. That's kind of fun.
What's that?
We got
helicopter.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
111. New York 111.
Yeah, it's a fun one. So one of the things I think is interesting about this whole thing with President Trump, and it's something that it's not just the numbers on the dates, but it's also the season. So obviously we're in the Passover season, and in the Passover you would be having the Last Supper, and, you would be having then the Crucifixion Day and the Resurrection Day.
Yes.
So one of the interesting things, of course, in the way that those days are done, here, thanks. In the way that those things are done, you would start at sunset, and sunset goes into the following afternoon, sunset again. So that's the day. So there's a little bit of a question. President Trump intends to go back to Mar-a-Lago tonight and then speak at 8:30, I believe it is, and give people his version of what he's concerned about here. And is that kind of a Last Supper, kind of a get together time period? Going to the garden, one of the things that is lost in the Last Supper, that Passion Week is what they call it, where Christ comes into Jerusalem and goes through all these dramas. One of the things that people forget about a lot is this one character that was closest to him of all, which was Judas.
Yeah.
And just how close he was. Keep your friends close, your enemies closer. And so Judas is in this whole thing, very close to Christ. And what role does he play at each of the steps? And think about this. It's not even just that, that last week. It's really that last, month and a half or so, about 40 days out. Christ is told that his friend, who he stayed with very frequently, Lazarus, is very ill. And then, he dawdles coming over to see Lazarus, and Lazarus dies. And Christ doesn't speed up. Here's his very close friend. He stays at their house all the time when he's in the neighborhood. And he's portrayed as maybe being one of the closest friends who's not a disciple of Christ. And by this time, Christ has been ministering for, a little over 3 years. And so there's quite an entourage. He's a rock star. He's got the disciples. He's got an inner core of, James, John, Peter, and then he's got the other ones around him. And all of the apostles look to be Galileans, from a very small neighborhood, fishing village type of thing. Tax collector with Matthew, and doctor with Luke. And but they're all from kind of a simpler neighborhood. Judas is kind of the unusual one in a lot of ways. He comes from an area where the people tend to be a bit more highbrow. They consider themselves, the Yale crowd, the Harvard crowd, and the more sophisticated. And it's also this area south of Jerusalem where they're more anti-Roman rule. We got to do something about this. We got to take action. We got to overthrow the Romans. We got to kick them out of here and get back to, proper living. In their own sense, they're very militant about taking some kind of action. And then amongst themselves, within the Jewish community, they're very aggressive about the idea that the scriptures show that there's going to be a Messiah who's going to come and violently overthrow all the enemies and make the Jews the head, not the tail, and going to take some kind of action. So when you look at the scriptures, as Christ is, moving around the region, you see a number of times where the Pharisees and the Sadducees are engaging with the apostles, and there appears to be quite a bit of banter between them over and over on different subjects. And some of that banter goes back to the relationship of the Jews and Rome, and some kind of a violent overthrow to fix this. And if you look at that region south of Jerusalem, southern Israel, that's this area where Judas came from. And so it's interesting also that Judas becomes the one who holds the money bag. And probably as much as anything, because he was kind of a bit more aggressive, he was more sophisticated. He probably wore a little nicer clothes than some of the other ones. He was just a higher brow kind of a guy. His way of articulating things was probably just a little bit more studied, if you will. And so as he's going with them, he stays close to Christ. Think about this. Whenever they are going to take an offering, he's right there because he's the one that holds the money bag. And then when the apostles need bread, shoes, whatever, it's not just the 12 apostles anymore. They've got this whole entourage. The accounts are kind of, by that time in the ministry, probably had, a pretty steady cluster of folks. It would have maybe been 100, 120 people. And I'm sure it morphed around on the numbers a little bit, but it was a pretty large entourage that's traveling with them. And then in that last little season, everybody knows that the Passover is coming, and that's like the big holiday. Everybody goes to Jerusalem. Everybody goes to the temple. It's a pretty big deal. So in that last little bit, there's an interesting event happens. Christ has been talking to the apostles pretty repetitively that it's necessary that he suffer and die. And the apostles understand he's being very specific. He's not being allegorical. They're, hey, we're not going to let it happen. Don't worry. We're not letting them get you. There's no way. But there's this sense that he is going to Jerusalem and there's going to be drama. And he's become more and more direct with the Sadducees and Pharisees. Does your master pay the tax? Is he saying he's king? Is he proclaiming himself to be God? I and God are one. Is he saying, blasphemy? And amongst themselves, they've had the story. Christ had gone up in the Mount of Transfiguration, where he was seen with Moses and Elijah in a transfigured, celestial state or something. And so Peter was there, and James and John, and the other apostles only heard about it. So they're like, having these discussions, and you had this vision, and was it real, or was it just in your minds? What happened? And so they're all wondering if this is, some Messiah event. And from Judas's neighborhood, the way they understood this was that the Messiah is coming, with flaming swords and lightning bolts and going to destroy all the enemies, and zap, bang, it's all done, and we're in charge, and now we're the head of the whole region. And didn't see a suffering Messiah, only a conquering Messiah. And so on their way back, Christ finds out that his buddy Lazarus is sicker than a dog and dying, and then does die. It's like, Christ, if you just hurried up when I first told you that he was sick, you could have saved him. He could be well. He could be okay right now. And you dawdled. Well, when Christ was going to where Lazarus lived, and again, he had this large entourage, Christ didn't race there and leave everybody behind. He could have hurried up and run, but they had this entourage, women and children, probably wives and kids of the apostles and some of the other people around it who, made food, did things with this whole band. Christ didn't move faster than the whole band could move. He didn't go ahead of them. Sometimes he would. He'd go off ahead of the apostles to go pray. The time when he was out, when the apostles were crossing the sea, going over to another city, and then he went off on his own, says, you guys go on ahead and I'll see you over there. He's off to pray, and then they see him walking on the water, going right past them. And so he would take and separate himself. But in this situation, here's Lazarus is dying. He doesn't go off ahead. He doesn't, hurry to the situation to save his friend's life. And, he's been doing all these miracles and everything all over the place. And then he dawdles because he wanted everyone to come with him. And you have to think of what's going on here in this moment with Trump. He didn't have to go up to New York. He could have forced them to go through the legal process to extradite him from one state to another. He's a resident of Florida. He could have forced New York to present their case in a way that there's a governor's warrant issued between New York and the governor of Florida. And then both governors would have to be able to certify that the charges are valid, that it's a valid request, that it's been processed properly, all the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted. I'm dealing with a matter right now where someone was extradited from one state to another, and they didn't follow any of the lawful procedures. And both governors are going to be on the hook on it, because it was very clear that the U.S. Marshals were frauded by the prosecutor and the governors, and the U.S. Marshals resisted at a certain point, but went along with it just from intimidation. So, in this case here, Trump could have forced DeSantis to have to verify that these are valid charges, that it's that all the procedures have been done, and then they could extradite him if he wanted to. And he could change his mind at the last second. He could have drugged this out for a month. And he didn't. He wanted to go up there, be right there in the room, gave it enough time for everybody to kind of get ready for it. He wants everybody to see what's happening here and how they're conducting themselves. In the case of Lazarus, he moved slowly at a slow pace, got there to the town, and he gets there, and they tell him, you took so long, Lazarus is dead, we had to bury him, you weren't here for the funeral, it's horrible, why didn't you hurry up, why didn't you come heal him, he was your buddy, what were you thinking? And Christ says, well, take me over to the tomb. And they get over there, the graveside. He says, well, roll the rock out of the way. And I go, what? Look, okay. I know you're the prophet and everything else, but do you understand? By now he's thinking. He's been dead for days. Well, no, go ahead and roll the rock out. No, it's going to smell horrible. Like, you can't do that. Plus, they can't have any contact with a dead body. There's certain things there as a priest, and they have to go through cleansing stuff and all that. And they look at him as the rabbi. And so, but they do. He tells them to roll the rock away. They roll the rock away, and then he cries out, "Lazarus, come forth!" And you got to remember, they wrap their people in, kind of mummify them a little bit. They've got all these clothes that, they wrap them in sheets that they wrap them in. They put anointing oils on them so the body doesn't stink so bad. And Christ calls them to come out. And so Lazarus is coming out of the tomb like he's, a mummy. Somebody's got to unwrap him off the clothes. And everybody was totally shocked. They couldn't believe it. Now, some people have been portraying this moment with Trump like it's he's a Messiah going to the crucifixion and everything else. I kind of have a little different view of it. This is more of a Lazarus moment. They think that Trump's dead. We haven't done anything to save him. The military's not there. All this other stuff. While the real objective of a lot of these parties, and it's a very satanic, evil objective, is to preside over the death of America so that we can be dialed into a global new world order. And so Trump is more of a Lazarus type figure. Why didn't we come to the rescue? Why didn't we get this sorted out? How come nobody cared enough to intercept and get the election stuff resolved and all that? And so Trump, the question is, I've portrayed him as the Megador. I've done all sorts of shows on that. And the bull here is the deep state. DS, deep state. I love that.
23.
Jennifer has those over at the jennifermack.com. And by the way, she has flags over there now too that are just really very cool flags. But anyway, so Trump allowed himself to go up there, didn't put up any resistance. Everybody's showing up. The question is, are they going to be able to succeed in taking Trump out? What's being done here in the U.S. is a type of lawfare. The Gateway Pundit did a great article, came out today. And we've talked about this over and over, all the way back to, say, Sarah Palin and to some of Obama's people when he was running for Senate there in Illinois. They come up with ways to challenge whether or not somebody's can be a candidate or can come back as a candidate. So the people that were trying to run there in Illinois got challenged on legal matters, and then they ended up dropping off, and Obama didn't have any competition. Michigan had something similar with a couple of folks who want to run for governor, chief of police and a businessman, and then they challenged the number of valid signatures to get him on the ballot. Up at Sarah Palin there in Alaska, they filed lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit over the most bizarre things. They're at a snowmobile thing. Her husband races snowmobiles. It's cold out, and she puts on a jacket to stay warm while he's getting ready to start the race. Just has it thrown over her shoulders. And she'd been out there, signing a few autographs, talking to people. And, it's cold and they're waiting to start the race. She puts on a jacket and has some sponsors stickers on the jacket. And so it was claimed that as governor, she was promoting certain businesses because of the sponsors tickets, stickers on the jacket. Somehow that, violated her role as the governor. A lot. They just kept coming up with lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit to where she couldn't, they just, I think she had like 40 lawsuits going at one time, and she just stopped. She couldn't run for governor and fight all the lawsuits and do the job. This has been something that's been going on in America. So they can't beat Trump running for the presidency in a fair game. He's too powerful of a figure. So they're trying to take him out legally so that he can't even run with all the legal whatever they've got going. There's about 5 suits that they want to get him tied up in. And somewhere in here, one of the judges is probably going to want to say that he can't campaign. He can't talk to the public. He can't travel. They'll try to tie him down somewhere, and he's going to have to fight all the way through that. And that's this lawfare going on to try and stop Trump, by any means necessary, because they know that if Trump stays in the game, he's coming for them. Trump said the other day at Waco when he was doing the rally there in Waco, he said, this is a fight to the death. It's them or us. It's the deep state or us, the mega people that are going to win America. And we can't coexist. We can't live together is essentially what he's saying. Only one of us can make it through this. And so that's the fight. That's why I've, talked about the Megador a number of times. So anyway, that's this moment we're in, thinking about Lazarus. After Lazarus was resurrected, Lazarus continued with this entourage headed to Jerusalem. And, I've talked about the near-death experience, people that have died and come back. Most all the near-death experiences you hear about, they're dead for 3 minutes, 10 minutes, occasionally maybe an hour, very rarely more than just a few hours in whatever circumstance they might have found themselves in. But Lazarus had been dead for several days. So imagine what kind of stories a guy like Lazarus might have come back with. Did he just wake up, come out of the tomb in his burial clothes. And if you don't remember a thing, I don't know what happened. I just, one second I was there lying in bed. The next second, here I am walking out of the grave. No, I'll bet you he had one heck of a story. And so everybody wanted to hear it. So he continued on to the Passover, coming to Jerusalem, saw Christ when Christ came, everybody was expecting. He's a rock star. And they're throwing the palm fronds down in front of the donkey that he's riding in on. They're hailing him as a king. And the Sadducees and Pharisees are all pissed off and upset because they can't control this, and he's getting all the attention, not them. And the whole point of the Passover is everybody comes to the temple and they bring an offering and they reconcile themselves with God, and it's a once a year thing. And they're normally kind of in charge of everything. Everybody comes for that, but Christ is getting all the attention. If they're overlooking at Christ coming into town, they're not down at the synagogue at temple dropping off their sacrifices, which, by the way, you have to think of the temple area. It's like a bazaar in front of it. It's like a flea market. Everybody's got their tables out there, and people might have come and they go to the priest and they say, I want to give this offering for the priest to go do an offering to God. And they bring something as simple as a dove, a lamb, a cow, whatever, and within certain things. And then the priest has to look at it and decide, yes, it is without blemish, it's healthy, and so we'll accept that and give it as an offering to God. But if they decide that, well, it's got a little blemish here, it walks a little funny, it's whatever, its ears laying over weird, we can't take it. And you'll have to go over and talk to the merchants. They've got animals that are, certified 100% good to go. And, they got a brother-in-law that has bleach and he can get rid of a black mark on it. They take an animal and trade, go out in the back, bleach it out, and send it back up to the front. But they're not there. Everybody's not at the temple. They're watching Christ coming into town because they want to see what's going to happen. And so the next day, Christ goes over to the temple early in the morning, and he's out there all day watching everybody showing up at the temple with their sacrifices, talking with the merchants, seeing what happens with the priest, the whole smear. And the whole time, Christ is braiding a whip. And I can tell you, because we know that he was mad, that it was not just a sissy whip. This thing was a serious whip. And in the heat of the day, high noon, if you will, all the apostles are kind of sitting there watching. There's people probably coming over, asking him a question or two, and he's answering it. But he's watching the whole operation around the temple in this bizarre area before it gets there. And he suddenly gets up and walks down to the middle of the tables, and he starts cracking the whip and flipping the tables around. And you got pictures, animals there. People have, sheep and goats and cows and, cages with doves and everything else. And he's down there throwing it around. And, to anybody watching, it was like a madman. He was overturning their tables. They got the money out. They got their bags with the money. Even during this whole time, imagine the apostles, even Judus, watching this going on. I'm sure that everybody probably thought he was going down there, and Judas was right there with him because he has the money bag. And he's going to go down, and they haven't brought one with him. So he's going to go down there and buy himself a lamb or a cow or 10 of them or whatever to offer for sacrifice for the people. And so they're ready to go. We're ready to go right down there, and we're going to do it. Instead, he goes down into the middle of this thing and causes complete mayhem. He disrupts the whole money grubbing operation. He's calling them out as a den of vipers and thieves who make God's house a place of merchandise and theft. Okay? They perverted something that was intended to be something beautiful to reconcile people with God himself. And instead, they're it's just a bazaar. It's just a stores, Walmart. And so when that happened, you have to think of the psychology of all the people that were there. The whole town is here for one thing: Passover and sacrifices and reconciliation with God, and a Passover dinners that are, all of, people that live there in town. They've got all the relatives in. They're going to have a big dinner. It's a big deal. Celebrate the Passover dinner that was what happened before the people were freed from slavery in Egypt and went to go out to the Sinai and onto the promised land. And so it's part of this whole process. And they thought Christ was coming to free them from Roman rule, this conqueror, to orchestrate the people, to start the revolt, to start the revolution, and free them from the Romans. And God's going to come out of the heavens and rain lightning bolts on them and change this whole thing. And certainly that was what the people from the crowd, especially backing Judus, were like. And remember too, Judas had relatives. They know he's with the Messiah, that everybody, this prophet that they think is going to be something great. And he's probably sent, based on other things that we see, intonations in scripture, that he has others of his family that have shown up to kind of be there, hang out with them and see all this stuff. With all that in mind, you then see that he disrupts the whole money operation there and gets everybody in turmoil. And it's the talk of the town. Nobody can function. All the animals got let loose. Things went, all over the place. They're trying to catch their animals. They're trying to get their money back in their bag. They're trying to get their tables back upright. And you can see even the apostles, guys like Judas, hey, stop. We can't do this. We gotta, we're gonna cause a problem here. Everybody move away. Let's fade into the crowd somewhere. It's embarrassing. And there was always Sadducees and Pharisees around Christ and the apostles asking hard questions, etc. They kind of gravitated towards Judas because he could understand them. And he's the one that holds the bag. He's the more sophisticated of the bunch. When this happens, the head of the temple, the Caiaphas, who was the high priest, and some of the people around him, and the Sadducees and Pharisees, what are we going to do? This guy's ruining our whole business. He's messing up town. We only have one, big holiday a year to make money, and he just screwed us up. How are we going to get this resolved? And they no doubt knew that, I'm sorry, I had a distraction there in the background there. They no doubt knew that Judas was kind of a little more sophisticated. Maybe he's a little more approachable. He would understand the money issue. You can't do this. Let's tone it down. And there was apparently some banter that went back and forth. Can you go reason with him and talk him down out of his tree and get Christ to understand what's going on here, so we don't have a ruin the holiday or cause the Romans, who were very aware that there was this undercurrent trying to go to some kind of a civil war or a revolution of some sort, and Pontius Pilate, several of the prefects that had been there before him had gotten sent out because they couldn't keep this region under control. And so he was going to be the next one out if he couldn't keep it tamped down. So they go over the next day, and they have this a couple days later, they have their Passover feast. Christ, going to dinner, a woman comes and she takes a very expensive alabaster jar and she breaks it and then puts the ointment over Christ's head and all the way down to his feet. And this was about a year's wages. So it was very expensive. Imagine what you make in a year. And then she spent the entire amount. And immediately Judas, in his kind of senior role, think about it, he had enough control within the apostles. He had enough say-so, gravity, weight, respect, that he immediately pipes up, Jesus, why did you let her do this? Shouldn't she have taken and put that in the treasury, in the bag, or go out and sold it somewhere and taken the money from it and put it in the bag? We could have taken that jar of ointment, a year's worth of wages. I could have gone over to the market. We got all the merchants in town. All the diamond jewelers are here, all the precious gem people, all the ointment people. I could have gone down there and I got a great price for this, and we could have put it in the bag to help the poor. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? You always have me helping the widow here and helping the other person there, and feeding the entourage while we're doing it. Instead of having 120 people following you around, we could add 500. We could expand the business. And so Judas, this is lost on him. And Christ rebukes him and says, leave her alone. What she's doing here, I'm being anointed for burial. He's still telling the apostles that he's about to be killed. Now, the other thing got to get in Judas's mind and the other apostles. They've walked away from everything else they're doing. And they've only done this, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever the amount of time. They've been following Christ around. They've left their other professions. They haven't been building a house or the other stuff. So Judas, being, kind of a money manager, calculating and everything else, he's like, I walked away from everything to run this business. And then you're saying you're going to be dead? Who's going to run this if you're gone? Or if you get arrested or something else is going on? That money could have been really useful to us if needed. And then he gets rebuked. And Christ says, everywhere that our message goes, the good news, this woman and what she's just done will be talked about. And then Christ proceeds to wash all of their feet. But the other thing that happens is they sit down to have dinner, and Christ takes a piece of bread and he says, the one that I give this to, he's the one that's going to betray me. And they're all like, what are you talking about? And he gives the bread to Judas. And he says, go do what you need to do. That sounds like it was coded and Judas himself didn't know, or the other apostles didn't know. But Judas had been rebuked. And there was tension in the room because they didn't see eye to eye. And you have to kind of also picture that when the priest and everybody else was talking to Judas, they probably were saying stuff like, you've done the same miracles that Christ has done. You could do the same thing if you wanted to. And he's not, you're just as powerful as he is. Why don't you go out there and you can run these guys, and this guy can, maybe go in the background and do more writing or something. Okay. So why don't you just go do that and put him off to the side, and these high holy men, they go in a room somewhere, and you can run these things, and we could work with you, Judas. And let me just go close this door so I don't have quite the racket here. Everybody just close that. I'm on my interview on the radio. So, I apologize to the guys there. So they've approached Judus to do what they need to do to help them out to get this thing sorted out. And Judus goes back to these same people and says, okay, I'll do the deal with you. And they say, well, what can I get out of this? Because I've got to, catch up for all the money that I've lost and time on this thing. And, he's treating me horrible and blah, blah, blah. So what am I going to do? They give him, look, we'll give you 30 pieces of silver, start your new ministry. You can go, start a prayer center somewhere, whatever, go rebuild your house, start business, whatever you want to do. And, but we don't know, it's dark out. We don't know where he is right this second. Now I can go find him, follow me. And, I'll kiss him on the cheek, because that's the way we greet each other. And then, you'll know who it is. And then you can run up and grab him, but don't let him know that it was me. And then they come back up and up in the Garden of Gethsemane, and you got to think about it a little bit. Judas probably came into the garden. Hey, I'm sorry. I feel bad. I shouldn't have done what I did. I was all upset. But forgive me. I love you, Lord. And then moments later, here comes the whole Roman guard and the priests, and they grab Christ. Well, because he betrayed him. It wasn't as simple as just, why did Christ let him close enough to even kiss him on the cheek? Because he was, I'm sorry, and you got to let it go. But it was not with true repentance. It was just an act. And to buy time, to let the guard know which guy to go after. And then the whole thing happens. When they take Christ, one of the things that's interesting about it, they said they were just going to, keep him under wraps for a few days. They were going to, maybe get him through this holiday season so he doesn't do something bad to the temple again and screw up their merchandise and everything else, and merchandising, get through the dinner stuff and all that, and then they'll figure out what to do with him after that, and let him go. And that we know that from the text, because when all of a sudden the crowd is out there and there's people inciting the crowd, rabble rousers, kind of like we had on J6 with somebody, in the background trying to do something to make something happen in there. And they were government agents in there rabble rousing from the inside, looking like they were, Trump supporters and ready to go do stuff. And they were actually trying to incite something. They were saying, crucify, crucify, crucify. What did he do? He didn't kill anybody. She had somebody raise him from the dead. What's the basis for, what they're going to do? So even Pontius Pilate's like, what are you talking about? So he said this, so he said that, did he do something worthy of death? Are you kidding me? And when Judas realized that they wanted to crucify him, put him to death, Judas himself all of a sudden goes back to the priests, and he takes the money that they gave him, the 30 pieces of silver, and says, no, let him go. I'm going to give you this back. You can't do this. That's not what the agreement was. But he himself, the betrayer, the traitor, had been betrayed. These people were, had lied to him, given him a falsehood. So they wouldn't take the money back. Nope, you took it as a deal. Deal's done. Why? Because it was blood money now, because they were going to kill him. Judas throws the money at their feet, runs off, feels bad. All of the events of the remainder of the day. Remember, the day starts at sunset and goes to the following sunset, the way the Jews do this. So all through the night, the morning, the scourging, and then put on the cross and crucified. that all takes place out through this 24-hour period. And Judus, seeing everything that's happened, remember, thunder and lightning, this great curtain that blocks inside the temple between where the people are and the outer court, and the inner court's a great big huge curtain. It's like a foot thick of animal skins, and it was rent top to bottom and just torn asunder. God himself ripped it to break the block between the people and God himself, spirit, in the temple. And that was symbolic of us, because of the Christ, being able to open between the men, between humankind and God himself directly, because the price of sin had been paid. So Judas goes up on this hillside and commits suicide. And nobody goes up and touches the body. He's hanging there for a few days. His body starts to bloat, and the rope stretches under the weight and breaks, and his body falls down the hillside, and his bowels come out. And it's all, just a huge stinky mess. And it's said 100 years later that that area still stank from the stench of Judas's decaying corpse. We know when people are demon possessed, one of the things that people talk about when the demons are cast out is there's a stink, a smell, a putridness that goes out. And so that's kind of what was happening there in the stuff. All right, give me about 3 minutes. Okay, super, thanks. So the long and short of it is that Judas is remembered as having brought that stench there. This whole area is called the Potter's Field, and that Potter's Field becomes the place where anybody that doesn't have family or relatives, or is a stranger in the area and can't afford a gravesite, they'll get buried there. And that's this thing. So anyway, that's the season we're in, the season of betrayers and traitors. And the question is, who's betraying who? What's that all about? Who's betraying America? Is Trump? Is this about Trump as this messianic figure, or is it more importantly, is this America that they want to sacrifice in the sacrificial season? I've got I'm using a room here, and I've got folks waiting for me anyway that just arrived. I better get down and get moving. So I wish I could go a little bit longer, but I think I probably better break it off there. But I want people to think about that in this season, and I think it's a fun corollary for us for this season. Let's see, next couple of days, maybe we come back and we finish this up, Tom, and see what's actually transpired.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you've got any, let's do that in a few days. We'll see actually what's happened. Just one question before you go.
Yeah.
Are we actually going to see an arrest of President Trump today, or an arraignment?
Oh yeah, that's already happened. He was
okay.
That's where they'll process him. He'll go before the judge. They'll decide let him go on his personal recognizance or a bail. He's going to speak at Mar-a-Lago at 8:30.
So it has taken place, Eastern. And then he's been let out on bail, go back to Mar-a-Lago, and
that's the plan. These people could do something wild or weird, and I haven't heard in the last few minutes, but that's the plan. So,
anyway. But there was no picture of him, per se, in cuffs or anything like that. It was more of a procedural thing than a kind of photo shot.
They had said they weren't going to cuff him, and of course you've got Secret Service there that'll be with them the whole time and all that. But they'll get the picture, get the fingerprints, the whole schmear. Yeah.
Okay.
They'll try to be as degrading as possible.
Yeah. Okay. So. Yeah, let's do it in a few days.
Okay. Super, bro.
Thanks, Juan. Take care, buddy. Godspeed. Cheers.